Welcome to our B380 presentation on Mexico. The first thing we're going to talk about are the Hofstede cultural dimensions. The Hofstede cultural dimension is now developed by Gert Hofstede, and this tool is used or influenced by culture in any given country. The dimensions are power distance index, individualism versus collective, masculinity versus femininity, uncertainty avoidance, long-term orientation, and indulgence versus restraint. Based on the results of the Hofstede cultural dimensions in some aspects, their culture is one that tends to work well as a team, and they reach the end goal in unison while also respecting authority. As each individual dimension is discussed, it is important to note that the greatest differences between Mexico and the United States are power distance, individualism, uncertainty avoidance. So as we look at the history of Mexico, Mexico has a very rich history that dates back to 8000 BC. The modern day culture in Mexico has been shaped by the Catholic Church, the American culture, and hardworking ancestors. One of those ancestors are the Olmecs, who raised a lot of the crops we still see in Mexico today, and they instilled the culture of hard work. In Mexico is Catholicism. Of the Mexican popular Catholic Church. In Mexican culture, family is highly regarded and of greatest importance, and this has been shaped by the Catholic Church, which also considers family to be of greatest importance. It is not uncommon to have multiple together in the same house, and they are a collective society, so they take care of one another and do it to better the community as a whole. They do have a slight masculine society, and that's due to their proximity to the United States. This means that competition and status do play a part in society and decision. However, they do have a high power distance rating, which means they do need hierarchy. So as we look at negotiation styles, cutting straight to the chase in a business deal is not a wise idea. Culture, they don't want to just start a deal, sign, and be finished. They want a long-term commitment from any business partners. Your attitude and information should be presented in a kind, gentle way without targeting any name. Because Mexico is more group-oriented, you don't need to benefits or praise because that's not what they are looking for. Avoid a fast-paced meeting and several times before closing a deal. They will use deceptive techniques such as telling lies, sending fake nonsense, pretending to be disinterested in the whole deal or in single concessions. They may misrepresent an item's value or make false demands or concessions. There's also no need to try and prove them wrong as further away rather than bringing them closer. So the Mexican government is a front. In Mexico, the president is the head of the state and the government is divided into three branches, so the judicial and executive branch. In Mexico, however, the roles of Congress are different than they are in the United States. Given much power to control, and they essentially carry the president's beliefs into their organization. One political development that may play a major role in business is NAFTA. The recent States government will affect our business deals with Mexico as our new president, Donald Trump, will begin renegotiating the NAFTA agreement. NAFTA will affect on the relationships between Mexican and American governments. And Mexico is open to foreign direct investment in most economic sectors, and they have consistently been one of the largest recipients of FDI among emerging markets. Macroeconomic and its proximity to the United States is very appealing to foreign investors. So with the Economic Freedom Index, this is a measure of how easily and unhindered economic activity is within a country. And Mexico scores slightly higher than average in the economic index and is considered moderately free, while in the United States we're considered mostly free. There are three areas of potential issue. The first being in Mexico, we will encounter redundancy of workers and the rigidity of work hours. will compare the freedom from corruption. In Mexico, corruption is culturally, and we will need to make sure that corruption is taken very seriously as it is embedded and accepted in the Mexican culture. Finally, we'll need to look at property rights. The court system in Mexico is inefficient and subject to delays. Corruption may be present, and the judiciary may be influenced by other branches of the government. This with the same amount of caution that we approach corruption will more than likely be evident in property rights as well. Look at the business regulatory environment. Over the past several years, Mexico has been seeing their productivity score by changing regulations to make it easier and more appealing to do. They did have a indicator rating business. It dropped 21 places, dropped 2 places, but their contract enforcement did step process that is required to start a business in Mexico. And this process takes about 8.5 days and costs about $770. So first we would need to obtain authorization to use the company name. Then we would have the notary of the public prepare the deed of incorporation, and we would sign all the documentation. Then that is filed. Then we obtain a tax registration number. We register with the Mexican Social Security. We would register with the local tax administration. We would notify local governments of opening our establishment, and then we would register with the National Business Information Registry. When we compare the OECD global indicator averages, Mexico is pretty average for starting a business, and in many areas they do far better than the regional average. They do, however, have a higher tax rate, but they have worked on contract enforcement and have brought that down to 350 days. When it comes to trade barriers, because of NAFTA, we have very few trade barriers in Mexico. As long as most of our source materials come from North America and we file the proper paperwork, we have no tariff barrier. Could change if just NAFTA, but at this time we have no other barriers to worry about. So foreign direct investment is when a foreign investor has direct control over a company within another country. The emerging countries most open to foreign direct investment. There are several sectors that are restricted or limited when it comes to FM, and these sectors include the distribution and transportation of liquefied petroleum and the generation, distribution, and commercialization of electricity. Sectors that are in decline, and these sectors include agriculture, fishing, timber, mineral production, leisure, culture, recreation, and athletic services. Mexican government has removed many trade barriers that would have stopped incoming foreign direct investment, as well as introduced tax exemption, tax advantages for new businesses. They've also created zones that were introduced to help attract further foreign direct investment, and they were created to investment to economically underdeveloped areas in the southern part of Mexico. Conditions in Mexico. The first thing we need to look at is GNI, with sum of value added producers plus any product taxes in Mexico. The GNI year since 2011, with every year being different than the year before. That is the gross domestic product, and the GDP is added by all resident producers plus included in the valuation of output. And there was an increase in GDP every year from 2011 until 2014, and the only loss occurred 2014 to 2015. The next thing we would need to look at is the inflation rate. The inflation rate measures the rate at which price levels are increasing, and there has been minimalistic fluctuation in this number until 2020, and that's when it did decrease, which is an indicator of loss of wealth. Another economic factor that is very important is the lending interest rate, and that's the money charged by banks or lenders in exchange for the use of money or assets. And this is typically referred to in the United States rate. In Mexico, this rate impacts the value of the peso. It also affects purchasing power and can cause fluctuations in the inflation rate, and it will in fact affect the overall cost of doing business. On December 15th, 2016, the central bank of 5%. This has been the third straight time that they've raised the interest rate, done in an effort to protect the declining value of the peso. The final factor to consider is the unemployment rate and the labor force participation rate. So the unemployment rate is the percentage of the total labor force that is currently seeking employment and willing to work. And the labor force participation rate is the percentage of the population that is currently employed or actively seeking employment. And the unemployment rate dropped significantly from 5.9% in 2011 to 4.3% in 2014. And the labor force participation rating has also from 2011 to 61.6% in These are signs that Mexico's economy is doing well. Those that can work and find the currency, the value of the Mexican peso has been declining for the last several years, and Mexico has fought the decline of the peso, but they've only been able to slow the devaluation relative to the dollar. The peso went from 94 pesos per dollar to 22 in 2000. So if our Mexican operations obtain foreign materials with pesos, then the cost of those products will be relatively higher than if we used. A few ways we can deal with the currency fluctuation are marketing an overvalued currency, searching for higher interest rates, and buying undervalued currency. So other economic and financial risks, as we mentioned, we are anticipating changes with NAFTA, and this could cause a drop in trades between Mexico and the United States. There is also another area of trouble that could affect the economic conditions, and that's the drug cartels. They are seeking to fill market demand or stimulate new demand for their product, and the Mexican cartels are doing this by expanding into new drug markets and using innovative and secret means to do so. Research shows that violence in Mexico has increased 7.6% since 2015, and the heavy amount of violence can have an effect on the safety of employees and business negotiations. The infrastructure in Mexico is the backbone of Mexico's economy, and Mexico has tried to increase their infrastructure by partnering with National Infrastructure Program to build back up different major networks and structures in Mexico. But Mexico does have some key infrastructure advantages with technology, transportation, and ports. A few specific advantages include their computer technology, high-speed broadband, educated IT support, new highways and railroads, and multiple ports. Mexico's desire to increase their infrastructure and other physical developments does give us hope that these will benefit us as we partner with Mexico for business. So regional and economic agreements. So there are several that we need to be aware of. In the World Trade Organization, regional trade agreements are defined as reciprocal trade agreements between two or more partners, and they include free trade agreements and custom unions. Mexico is currently entered into 4 such agreements, which are the General System of Trade Preferences among Developing Countries, Latin America Integration Association, North American Free Trade Agreement, Protocol relating to trade negotiations among developing countries. We also need to look at bilateral trade agreements. A bilateral trade is the exchange of goods between two countries that facilitates trade and investment by reducing or eliminating tariffs, import quotas, export restraints, and other trade barriers. And the benefits of both regional trade and bilateral trade agreements are that they reduce or eliminate tariffs, they reduce or eliminate import quotas, and they reduce or eliminate restraints. And they also free up the open movement of people, products, and other resources. When we look at products to import into Mexico, there are several that we're looking at, one of which is the reverse osmosis system. And there are currently about 12 million people in Mexico without access to drinkable water. And because of the water quality concerns in Mexico, we believe that the reverse osmosis product can really help obtain drinkable water and improve the water quality for those that do currently have access to drinking water. The reverse osmosis system that we would be using eliminates nearly all contaminants by using a 3-stage filter system. Another product is WaterGuard Fuel Filter, and a few of the many advantages of this include a 6% increase in miles per gallon. It extends equipment life and it lowers the maintenance costs, as well as removes water and particle contaminants, which help with emissions and the environment. This kit is adaptable to most vehicles in Mexico, and one well-known competitor that we might be facing is AutoZone. Although there are only about 20 AutoZone stores in Mexico, it is still a known company that sells fuel filters. Unlike the United States, where 95% of households own a vehicle, in Mexico, less than half of all households own a vehicle. This is a popular product. However, since it is only available at AutoZone, this will help an unmet market because this product is not very widely available. And the last product we're looking at is ThermoSave, which is a lower cost composite construction material. And it's easy to use and very durable. The material is prefabricated panels with a polystyrene core sandwiched between 2 sheets of concrete board. And this product is very durable and has been tested and built to stand up against some of the harshest natural conditions in the world. It is also quick and easy to erect, and this product will serve a market that is underserved in Mexico. Currently, homes in Mexico are built out of bricks and adobe, which do not stand up well to natural disasters, and they're not as well insulated. Mexico is situated in a very highly seismologically active area. So the ability to withstand earthquakes will serve this market very well, and it also helps to insulate the homes and protect against the higher temperatures that you see in Mexico. ThermoSave panels will allow for a more comfortable living environment. And the closest alternative that we've been able to find is a product called Durarock cement board. And while this product does provide some of the same value, it is more of a sheetrock product than a building system, and it still requires framing, which has the same associated costs. The culture in Mexico, as mentioned previously, is collective, so this would allow families to have safer and bigger homes. Thank you for taking time to watch our presentation. Here's our bibliography.